Hello, and welcome to the Washington Farm Bureau Update, a podcast designed to provide the latest agriculture, legislative, and Farm Bureau information. Greetings, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Ben Tyndall. So if you have turned on a television set recently, checked your mail, perused the internet, or just driven around your neighborhood lately, you could not have ignored the screaming reminder that it is election season. If you're like me, you are likely being inundated with ads, flyers, yard signs, etc. And these are all important elements to this important process. All the same, there are so many candidates on this year's ballot and so many issues at stake that it can understandably be overwhelming to know just where to start when making these decisions. Well, that is where the Washington Farm Bureau Political Action Committee, or our PAC, can be of a great help to you. And we're going to talk about their efforts to identify and endorse pro-agriculture candidates that you, our members, can confidently support and rally behind. On today's episode, we are proud to have Robyn Meenach on to help us navigate some of those races and walk us through the PAC process that they took to endorse some of these candidates. Robyn is the chairwoman of the Washington Farm Bureau PAC. So Robyn, thank you so much for being a part of today's conversation. Appreciate you checking in with us.
Thank you, Ben.
So Robyn, start us off. In the primary election, we as voters are presented with a large slate of candidates this year to consider. And like so many people around the state, my wife and I, we got our voter's guide recently, and I was struck with the fact that there were something like 30 plus pages of gubernatorial candidates alone. The spectrum is quite large when you're looking at their positions and priorities and weeding through the candidates and identifying who to vote for. That can be a very intimidating task. So talk to us and tell us about the process and how the Farm Bureau PAC determines who to endorse.
Absolutely. First of all, our PAC is a little bit different than a lot in that we stay very true to our grassroots format that we have in Farm Bureau. Each county Farm Bureau can create a candidate evaluation committee that researches candidates for state and local offices. And they look at vote records, endorsements from other organizations and individuals. They look at PDC reports. They look at website reviews, and possibly they might do interviews or send out questionnaires. So then each CEC, Candidate Evaluation Committee, makes a list of recommendations. Those recommendations must be approved by their County Farm Bureau Board, and then they are sent to the State PAC Board of Trustees to go through the endorsement process. So in the case of legislators for the state government, if their district covers more than one county, then all the county farm bureaus must agree in order to make an endorsement. And a candidate for Congress must receive agreement from at least 2/3 of the counties in their congressional district.
So what I'm hearing is for these local and legislative districts, there is a wonderful pairing between the county farm bureaus and the PAC trustees, where the counties have a great deal of say into which candidates are endorsed. There isn't this top-down approach, but really the voice of the counties carry the majority of those particular determinations. Well, that's great to hear.
Absolutely. Now, for the state races, it's a little bit different in that still we take the recommendations from the county. But the state races actually are done by a process within the PAC Board of Trustees. And it is the PAC Board of Trustees that makes all of the endorsements. So we rely heavily on the recommendations that we receive from the county. So for state offices, the state board runs through very much the same process. We look at the candidates and we see what they stand for, what they're trying to do. We look at their list of endorsements, and we really have to evaluate them for electability. Sometimes we can really like a lot of candidates, but if they are just one issue oriented, or if we just don't feel that they will appeal to a wider spectrum than rural Washington, we have to take that into consideration. So we do make recommendations from the state PAC board, and make endorsements for candidates for state offices as well.
All right, so let's talk for a moment about those endorsements. The WFB PAC 2020 primary endorsement list came out about 3 weeks ago with a few more endorsements that were added to the list about a week or two later. What can you tell us about some of those races and what stuck out to you and the PAC trustees as you're looking over the various names and the potential recommendations?
Sure. The races that we endorsed most recently included the office of governor, and this is a critical race for Washington State this time. It was important to note that we really liked 3 candidates, and they certainly would all uphold the issues that are of importance to Farm Bureau. But the final choice came in electability, and that part is critical. And that's why we chose Dr. Raul Garcia to be the candidate that we endorsed, because we believe that he will appeal to a broader audience than some of the other candidates. And that's really important. It has been a real challenge. You know, in the past couple of years, farmers have been labeled as slaveholders and human traffickers. We've had anti-labor bills. We've had bills that would restrict or eliminate important pesticides. We had bills that blocked the permitting of important port facilities. We've had carbon taxation and cap and trade schemes. We've even had bills that talked about the removal of the Snake River dams, even though that's a federal issue. So the governor's race is especially critical this year. And I think the important part is that people just take a look at the list, because not everybody has an endorsement. And I guess I should probably explain that. Sometimes we can't come to an agreement. Sometimes there are multiple good candidates running for the same office. Sometimes we don't really like any of the candidates that are running for an office. So people will find, especially in the list that we produce for the primary, that not every single office is covered. We also allow counties to submit recommendations for endorsement for some of their local candidates. So you will find a list of candidates maybe for county commissioners or some local judges that are on our list of endorsements.
So speaking of that list that you're referring to, what does the fact that Farm Bureau put together this list, how does that impact the voter? So a voter, a Farm Bureau member receives that list via email or via the publications that we put out. They see it. Then what? How does that impact, or what should they then do as a voter with that list?
Well, I think that what we're trying to do is to help them understand candidates and to realize that these candidates that are on our list are ones that we have determined will closely align with our policies, and they're very sensitive to the issues that we have. And furthermore, we believe that they are electable. And so they know that by casting their vote in favor of these candidates, that they are helping themselves in their agriculture or their small business. So we understand that not every issue will be covered, but we have found that you can't be a single issue person and probably win an election. So I hope that our Farm Bureau members will have faith in this process, and that this will help them because, as you said, I believe there are 36 candidates running for governor's office alone. And so that's a lot for one individual to have to research. And there are multiple candidates in many of the other state offices. So we want people to vote. We don't want them to be so overwhelmed that they won't return their ballot. So by giving them this tool, we hope that we will help garner some more votes for candidates that we truly want to support.
Okay, so one of the things that I've heard is this idea that, I'll just wait out the primary and plan to vote in the general election. Why should we get out to vote in the primary? And why can't we just wait until the candidate pool is weeded out through the primary process, and then I'll vote in the general election when I have fewer choices? What's at stake right now as you're looking into August? Why should people get involved and vote in the primary election on August 4th?
Sure. This is important because we have kind of an odd system here in this state in that we have what we call a top two. So in other states, you'll have a Democrat and a Republican that will rise to the top. In this state, you may have two Democrats in one race or in a general, or two Republicans, depending upon how many votes were garnered. Also in this race, especially for governor again, we know that there are 5 or 6 Republican candidates that are going to be splitting the vote. And there are also a handful of Democrats running against Governor Inslee, however, probably will not garner a lot of votes. So it's important that we try to make sure that our candidate will survive the primary and be able to move on into the general election. So that's really important. And I think it's important that we need to vote because we have to show that it is important in rural Washington that our issues and our policies that we're promoting be understood and heard and acted upon. And without voting, we have lost that voice.
That makes a great deal of sense. Now, voting is undeniably a key component, but are there other things that voters can do? Obviously, we're looking at the primary election on August 4th and then walking into the general election in November. What are other options that Farm Bureau members have beyond simply voting?
Sure. I think there's probably 3 things that I would encourage everybody to do. The first is to encourage your family, your friends, your neighbors to please vote. And if we can just share our list of endorsed candidates with them, you could use your email contact list because I find that it's not so pushy if you just say, hey, look, here's some candidates that are going to help agriculture or small business. Would you please consider them? Because there's other voters out there that haven't done the research, and they would appreciate having some help if you have some knowledge. So a lot of people are rather reticent to jump into this fray of politics. And a lot of us out here in the rural areas don't want to be pushy. But if you can share a list of endorsements, it's a really easy way to put that information out in front of others. And let them know that these are candidates that we are interested in and that have shown an interest in ag and other needs of small business. The second thing is to call up these offices and get and post some signs, especially for governor. It's an easy way to do it, and it shows that, you are engaged. Finally, make donations. You can make them to individual candidates, or you can also donate to our PAC. If you will go to our Farm Bureau website, which is WFB.com, if you click on the Advocacy tab and then select Political Action Committee, you can get the list of our endorsements and you can also make donations. And that's a great way to help out in the election.
Perfect. That is great information to know. All right. Now we have the 2020 primary endorsement list and it's out. But looking beyond the primary, how does this list hold up against the general election? Will individuals need to be re-endorsed? Is this list still good as we look into November? How does that work?
Sure. All the candidates that we endorse in the primary, if they survive the primary, will of course be endorsed in the general election. If a candidate did not survive the primary, or if we did not make an endorsement in a particular race, then we will go through the whole process again, and the counties will send in their recommendations, and the state PAC board will meet and take a look at those, and we'll go through that process, and we will then create a list of endorsements for the general election.
Well, we've touched on several things, and you've mentioned a few areas to be watching and named those. But would you say, is there an overarching issue or perhaps issues that you would say are truly at stake in this election cycle that we should be aware of? Things that we should be advocating for or perhaps advocating against? What's really on your mind as you're looking at the candidates and the need for farmers and ranchers to get out and vote during this election season?
Sure. I think the one issue that I would hope everybody would be really cognizant of is our state budget. As a result of the COVID shutdown, the Economic and Revenue Forecast Council predicts that we will have a shortfall of $4.5 billion in this biennium and another $4.3 billion shortfall in the next biennium. So Washington State has to have a balanced budget. But Governor Inslee has refused to call a special session of the legislature, and that's an action that only the governor can take. He plans to totally use up our rainy day fund and pray for help from the federal government. And this just is not sustainable. It is such an important issue that we have to consider and know that a out of control tax and spend policy that we have seen in the last 8 years will be devastating to agriculture.
Well, Robyn, as we wrap this up, are there any thoughts that our listeners, for them to keep in mind as they're considering how to vote next month?
Sure. I would say that remember that political strategists estimate that just 189,000 votes will put a candidate in the top two for the governor's race in this primary. So that number can be achieved if all of rural Washington unites. So the primary vote is important to help our candidates move on to the general election. So please vote, and please share our list with everybody that you can think of and encourage them to vote too. And thank you.
Thank you, Robyn, for taking the time with us, for sharing with us, for taking the lead to work through this PAC process and provide us with those endorsement lists and the needed information that we need as members.
Okay, there is one thing. Remember what Einstein said. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yes. Well, wise words, as it can certainly feel insane out there. But your work is truly providing some clarity and direction. Thank you very much. And
Thanks,
I
man.
really appreciate you taking the time with me, Robyn. Well, I want to repeat Robyn's encouragement to get out and vote on or before August 4th. Your voice is powerful and needed. It's needed both on the ballot, but your voice is also needed to share with your neighbors and friends about the candidates that you believe are going to advocate for a stronger and secure agriculture within our state. Again, you can find the 2020 WFB PAC political endorsement list on the Washington Farm Bureau website by typing www.wsfb.com/PAC. In the middle of the page, you should find a red button with the link to the endorsement list. With that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll chat again soon. The WFB Update is a production of the Washington Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture in Washington State, ensuring our family farms continue to feed the world. To learn more, visit our website at www.wsfb.com.